question I ask myself, what about what about democracy? And so we'll be discussing issues like doing what's the state of democracy in Ghana, in other countries in the sub-region. Have we some gains? Are we progressing? Are we and yeah, what are the issues and what are the challenges? And we're very fortunate to have a team of democracy project here with us, walk us through all the issues that I highlighted. We have any online, so we hope you that's today the event. And so straight into it, to start up, we'll take the remarks from Johnny Wilson. He was us online. And Mr. Wilson is the board chair of the Democracy Project, who is apt that we from him as we begin our program. Wilson, you're ready. Please, as your welcome remarks. spoke really like a boy, that next time you join us in person. So moving into it, I'd like to invite Director of Policy Engagement Partnership, and in the person of Kojo Asadi, he is representing CD as we know him, to fully step forward, and he will give us a US.
Okay, thank you very much, Mami, and welcome to everybody. All right, so welcome on behalf of our executive and our management, PD and staff. I have of my management, two of you directors who have joined us, Mr. Frederick Adufi and Philia Abremo, who are here. Today, really happy to welcome our democracy and development Dr. Osei Kwapon. Osei want to add these insights into we are learning about current experience of democracy. I think at CD, as you know, we are here to promote democracy, good governance, and inclusive development. So we are mainly watching our current experience with democratic decline. That's across the continent. It's also a global phenomenon. Trying to understand how we can arrest decline and begin, to build a more strong foundation for democracy to thrive. So one of the initiatives that we started in 2022 was the East Africa Democracy Charity Network, way to mobilize civil society across the South and counter this, rapid of authoritarian rule and democracy retreats that we were experiencing. And we are really happy that, Moses' entry into the space has to galvanize society across the South to really begin to act so that we can push back some of the issues that we are dealing with, coup d'etats and security and so forth. So it's just great that Wademos is able to support this type of work and with our own partners, Professor Sai, who is going to deliver this presentation to us today. So just to say that welcome home, brother. And we look forward to your insights, your lessons. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Asante. And finally, we want to welcome Mr. Paul Osakufo, who is the network coordinator for Wademo. And as Mr. Austin said earlier, Wademo ended this project. So Paul, we're happy to receive you now.
Thank you very much, Mami. I also want to add my voice to welcome you all to CDD-Ghana and also to acknowledge some of my colleagues who are here with us. As Dr. Kojo said, we have a new director of programs and operations and new director for finance. I also want to add my voice to welcome you and to all familiar faces, colleagues from civil society organizations in Ghana and beyond, especially those who are also joining us online. Just to add a bit of context about the definition of Wademo. So as Dr. Kojo did indicate, hello, Wademos is one of the regional initiatives CDD-Ghana, and it was established in response to the current recession that we're experiencing in the sub-region. So if you look at the sub-region at the moment, West Africa has become a hotbed in terms of democratic deterioration. If you look at the region, we are witnessing evidence of the intervention the military in politics. Mainly Mali, Burkina Faso, Guinea, recently Nigeria, are all under unconstitutional changes of government. They are working to transition to a civilian order at the moment. If you look at the activities of disinformation, misinformation, which is doing a lot of solidarity work, and currently our membership connections cross borders. Term limit, not a country's problem. It cuts across many countries. Recently, I was able to take effort Pakistan to elongate his. We've had situations in Guinea. The challenges are national in character. So society also had to change our approach and respond in a way that showed a lot more resilience and impact. And that is why Demos was established, to create that solidarity and to enhance collaboration among society organizations. In terms of operations, our programs are clustered around promoting election integrity and credibility, also support, protect human rights index, also protect big space, and another big initiative at the moment, what the most is involved, is a project to support civil society mobilization and engagement in the transition processes in Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, and Guinea. We've also supported and assisted in election observation, Nigeria, in Liberia, Sierra Leone, recently in Senegal. With the demo fund, it's also an initiative under demos, and the rationale for certain demos fund is to provide some kind of rapid response fund, very time sensitive, so that emerging an opening for democratic renewal be confronted. And that is why we created the fund. And so far, we've supported a number of organizations. Some of the notable organizations include WACSI, East African Civil Society Initiative. Last we supported them to organize civil society. We also supported the convening organized by Media Foundation for West Africa that discusses media and governance in the South region. Dr. Kwapon's work is very key at Demos. It emerged from a conversation that we had with ECOWAS somewhere last year when we had a convening on democratic decline in South Africa and also land support on the transition processes in the countries undergoing transitions. Part of the conversation, it came up that it appears early warning signs and identification of incidents of deterioration in the sub-region are not eminent enough. So how do we create some kind of early warning system that can help actors, including civil society, ECOWAS, and other agencies, to time detect these incidents and respond appropriately? So that's how we engage Dr. Kwapon to interrogate existing research in the models that are available that can provide some kind of evidence data, aggregate, and create some kind of a monitor that on a regular basis we can identify early of where there are signs of deterioration. So we are very delighted to listen to the lessons using Ghana as a case study, what kind of implications that he was able to draw sub-region. So thank you, and on behalf of what the project director, I see my colleagues from the PU also here, we are here to support you to climax the project. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Paul. So now we're going to go straight into the project presentation, the democracy project. Before we go into that, I want to acknowledge the presence of Executive Director. I know he's sitting back, but Prof, I see. So, Prof, hello. Thank you for joining us. And as we go through the project, realize that Dr. John Kwapon uses data a lot. We have some AB rep. So, Grace, anybody else, if you can say hi to us, please give us a wave. Thank you for coming. So, please join me in welcoming Dr. John Osapon. He is the democracy man, as I call him, but he's also executive director of the Democratic Project. We are about to, hear more now. So, John, we're ready for you.
Thank you very much, Mami. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for honoring our invitation to the event. It's a delight to see and every one of you. I also want to extend special recognition and thank you. And I'm sure this wouldn't be much a surprise to a lot of you, but I want to acknowledge the presence of my mom. She traveled all the way from Ekro to be with us this morning. She was only here by 8 o'clock this morning. So we are very, very grateful for attendance. So this started as a So this is West Africa governance assessment, identifying, addressing signs of retrogression in democratic governance. This is phase of our project, and this morning we want to share with you lessons learned from Ghana and the implications for reversing democratic retrogression in West Africa. Grateful for the Demos Fund for providing support for this project. This is a 6-month project, and 6 months I've been directing the project. So over the next half an hour that I have, give you the background and context, the key activities of the project, the lessons learned, and then the implications for the wider West Africa region. In 2023, I put a book titled Presidents, Its Elections, Years Later, Ghanaians See Democracy. And by the time the book was done, I didn't want it to be simply academic exercise. I also wanted to give some practical effect to the key findings of the book, especially because while the book was to capture some good things that are good for Ghana's democracy, it also identified some important challenges. And so I wanted an applied project that we design around those key challenges and how we to move conversations around addressing those key challenges. Thankfully, we saw an opportunity with the fund, submitted a proposal. Following that, we had a conversation, in the feedback from Wademos was instead of focusing exclusively on Ghana, use Ghana as a pilot, but think regionally and the project as a West Africa governance assessment type of project. Once that revision was done, we began rolling out our activities in November of last year. Our first activity was what we called democracy dialogues, and it was driven by the idea that if we are going to move to the next phase of democratic consolidation, social capital, and some of the dialogues are important. You do need a civic component to consolidating democracy in places like Ghana, the sub-region as well. Our first post for our democratic dialogue was the Center for Gender Research and Documentation at the University of Cape Coast. And then we had another session with the Care for Deprived Communities in Thai, and then the Ekufor Foundation Young Scholar Program. And then we had 2 online conversations, one that was led by Mr. Benjamin and then Dikro. But for the face-to-face dialogues, it's important to make sure we were capturing different voices. And so made sure that the gender representation piece of it, which took us to Cape Town, was also very important because it also gets to look at those that traditionally are democratic spaces to exclude, the marginalized, the socioeconomic challenge. So it was good to also have that constituency represented in our democracy dialogues. Then the sessions with the young scholars at the Ekufor Foundation looked at democratic experience more from the perspective of youth. With the dialogue, we had what we call the balance sheet exercise. So post the publication of 5 Presidents' book, one of the tools that we created was balance sheet. And so we get participants to think of democracy in terms of a balance sheet, assets, abilities, and when they put together their overall conclusion in terms of we have more assets or do we have more liabilities, how do we draw on our democratic assets to be to address the liabilities that we are beginning to see. And then we spent some time as a project discussing these 6 key challenges that we've identified. And Cape Coast included panel discussion. So they brought 4 of their professors and researchers at their center to talk about democracy more from what they are documenting as the experiences of women in our democratic spaces and the challenges that they faced. And then we wrapped up the conversation with them. In Malay, we started with the presentation of 6 challenges, and then we had a balance sheet exercise. They broke into groups, back reporting in terms of not the challenges, some of the ways in which they believe those challenges can be addressed. Then we wrapped up the conversation with the young scholars. Again, made sure that talked about the 6 challenges. It started the conversation off with an interesting question that had in the next 2 to 25 years. Thinking as a youth, do they see not just Ghana, but Africa taking some headways in socioeconomic development and democratic consolidation? And very interesting to even hear from the youth how they felt. It was a matter of optimism. It was also some skepticism about, maybe years is too short a timeline. And even when some of the youth said, not in lifetime. And I'm thinking you're only 20, 21. So that means another 50, 60. But it was a really good conversation with the young scholars at the foundation. We used social media to hold that conversation. ODICRA's work focused on the legislature. They do work, the activities are focused on parliament. So we had some conversations with them, focus on the next challenge. So again, then we moved to also meet with the political parties. The key idea of working political parties, this is an election year. For us, a democracy project, whilst we appreciate all the conversations around how to address the various socioeconomic challenges facing the country, I also believe that one of the core issues that must be addressed this election year is the quality of democracy. And we do with some of the things that we are seeing deteriorate. And so we want to get representatives from the political parties to meet and have a conversation with us. We went through the balance exercise, we presented the 6 challenges to them, and we also said to them, it is hope that they work on manifestos this year, they would incorporate what we are calling democracy plan, that they might promise to do something to address some of the challenges that we are seeing emerge, Ghana's path towards democratic consolidation. Of course, there cannot be democracy project without using data from the barometer survey, right? And to me, that has been the most exciting part of this project for me. So I enjoy the democracy talks. I enjoyed with the political representatives. But this, for me, was the most exciting part of the project. So if you think development, West Africa sub-region, and looking at all of the different good governance indices, democracy indices, I said to myself, could use one more analytical tool in our ask already as we try to address and even understand why we are seeing what we are seeing, not just in Ghana, but also in the sub-region. And the reason I also chose the Afrobarometer survey is that regularly say that so if you think about the line, the people have the really want to get good understanding what is really going on, then that for me becomes the tool of choice. Because it is citizens actually telling you about, to borrow the term, their lived experiences. And so we want to get understanding of how risky our democracies are becoming or not. Who better to tell you but people themselves who are living on a daily basis. If I don't, I'll spend the rest of the time talking about barometer. So again, just expanding the analytical tools and get a sense of what is really going on in the region. It took a lot of work creating the framework, thinking about all of the components, what should go in this risk profile, what kinds of indicators would make sense in looking at, what kind of scoring approach you want to use. I also go through, you aggregate the score, but importantly, how to establish the risk categories. Right. So I use, because I was looking at all the countries in the region who participated in B, I went round 8. Because round 8 where the edge data set currently publicly available. And so going through that, I get out a number of categories that we can look at. This is all informed by me, one of the most thought-provoking articles that have been published in democratization. It goes back to 2009, but it still remains very influential. It was titled Consequences of Democratization. What the author does is to talk about all of the different things that democracy is supposed to be able to accomplish. And based on that framework and looking at the different categories of Afrobarometer and the various questions, I came up with these categories. So we look at democratic norms. So it's like, support for democracy, support for term limits, support for multiple political parties. And then looked at another area like quality of our public institutions. So the A section that looks at trust in institutions, percentage of corruption, access to public services, questions that deal with if you have an interaction with facility, an education institution, did you have to bribe? So all of those things go to the cost of public institutions component. State and government legitimacy focuses on questions around government has the right to collect taxes. We should obey the rule even if you didn't for the party in the government in power. Also, that the landscape with focus on trust and information, both public and private media. This is key in democracy. Here, that component looks at the integrity of the electoral system, trust in the East, we judge the fairness of elections, media coverage of elections, the issues, states. Then the component of dividend is fueled by a article that I'm about, in which Giovanni only says, look, people prize dearly the new freedom that come with democratic transitions. But a time is to come, they would want more than just the basic freedoms that democracy gives. They also want to, this is my own, look at how they are getting in terms of everyday bread and issues. So the democracy lens looks at all questions in need, asks citizens how they feel about how well government handling job creation, managing economy, addressing education, improving basic health services, etc., etc. And then the quality of the democracy. So again, questions like extent of democracy, satisfaction with the way democracy is working. And last component looked at self-described civic habits. So there are questions that ask participate in collective action activities like joining to raise issues, joining demonstration, contacting your MP, your assemblyman. All that went into creation of this risk profile. Then the next phase was to look at, after scoring each country, total quality points, and determining the country's risk category, and the conversion of the quality points into a percentage. And percentage represents what we're calling the likelihood of not regressing. So I'll show you some examples of what the tool is trying to do. So you look at the case, this is an example of Ghana. What we end up doing is that giving the risk scores, we come with 4 key categories. No risk for retrogression, a low risk, medium, and then high risk. And so, and then based on your quality points, calculate your percentage of not retrogress. But the thing that we also do with the risk profile to say that there could be the lining things that is driving the sense of retrogression that we are seeing. We've been calling it foreign sign, hopeful signals. So for us, the green areas are your hopeful signals. The brownish areas are your warning signs. So the idea is to say, if you take a look at the country, first you want to understand the current state of risk, and which dimensions of democratic experience provide a lot more risk than the other. So here, in the case of Ghana, for example, our democratic and state and government legitimacy in terms of how citizens feel about these areas become assets. Places where become the hopeful signals that we can on to address some of the challenges that we are seeing. But if you look further to the right, the key thing that is driving the risk we are seeing, Ghana, for example, is the quality of our public institutions. Also, our habits. If you look at how at least we've described our civic habits, the kind of civic habits that necessarily sustain a democracy. Then, of course, the chance of retrogressing is 52%. So what you aim is that in green areas, which is 3% and above, that is where at least this tool in its initial iteration is to say countries want much higher percentage. That's what gives the confidence that you are not going to retrogress. So that another example is from Cote d'Ivoire. So again, you see that the current category is medium risk or retrogression, but you see they are not retrogress. And for them, you see their red areas, right? It's the college public institutions. For them, democracy develops their civic rights and even the current state of the community in terms of what citizens are saying. This go again. You see the areas, the green areas, the yellow areas, and then Nigeria as well. So we did that for all the countries in Africa that took part in being round 8. These are just some examples that we want to share. Then what we're trying to then do is that to do a comparative analysis across the country, the sub-region. So here, overall, for these 4 countries, you still see that there's a medium risk for democratic regression. But then when you look at the different dimensions, experiences either vary from country to country, or we also have shared experiences. And you do notice that across the examples that I'm sharing, quality of our institution continue to be one of the risk areas for our various democracies. So some lessons that we learned, at least from the perspective of citizens as we the various democratic dialogues, the experiences are shared, but the experiences are also very unique. Across time that looked at deprived communities, Cape Coast looked at gender, Accra that looked at youth, and the two online conversations, you notice that citizens do have pinch points similar, but are also experienced in different ways based on where particular citizens stand. So the gender issues were very different from the youth issues, or from the perspective of right communities. But there are also crisscrossing, right? So poor youth have particular experience as we learned. For us, the citizens' attitudes are also very critical to the consolidation. Over and over again, you would hear me say that sincerely Ghanaians have made their peace democracy. And as we held these dialogues, you do see that, yes, they embrace democracy, but at the same time, citizens are also facing some real points. What we say is that based on those attitudes which are critical to consolidation, you want your citizens at a place where not yet give up on the democratic experience. However, there are also some real pinch points that they face. And those pinch points, for me, project are the material effects of democracy. Right? People also want to see and butter issues being addressed. And it is not, it is the type of government in place that they tend to. It's what Carboni said years ago. He said, look, if a time is going to, people are going to start asking, what are we getting from this? His fear is that the legitimacy that democracy enjoys above all other forms of government would start questioning. So we saw that in the dialogues. Creates a kind of dilemma. So on the one hand, you want to keep the with democracy, but at the same, there are also things that can chip away at that we've made with democracy, especially when citizens are feeling those pains and feel that democracy is not delivered. How long do you keep telling them that some democracy will deliver? And how long do you get them to keep holding on to that and that hope all will be well? The other thing is the feed loop. So normally, gentleman was very interesting where he said, I need to sound optimistic, but I bet a year, 2 years from now, we will reconvene here in Tampa and we will be discussing the same issues because nothing would have changed. And it reinforced something that Africa captured in 2022. So the question about 5 years ago, the state of democracy, 5 years from now, the state of democracy. You look at the predominant reforms, no more than 4 out of 10 felt that things change 5 years from now in our democracy. Now, I found that particularly well, especially because of also the kind of sentiments that citizens expressed around like trust institutions, perceptions of corruption, even over satisfaction with democracy is working. So again, that look becomes important, right? How do you translate all the things that we are capturing citizens' voices to political elite, the custodians of democracy, get them to respond in such a way that citizens do not feel like gather, we talk, and end of story. We gather, we talk, and end of story. So that is one of the key things that we learned. For us, the project, partnerships became very important, and we couldn't have been able to capture, the general perspective of our democratic experiences, the deprived community, if we were able to work with the Center, Cape Coast, the organization, Tamale, and the J4 Foundation, CRA. assumptions pertaining the work we do around democracy is also critically important. So, for example, when I was thinking of the project together with our team about democracy play, I assume that look, it's an election year. If you are able to show the changes that Ghana's democracy is facing, it becomes very easy to have a conversation and a commitment to say, let's do something about it. But we are learning that it takes a lot more sustained conversation over a long period of time to be able to move kind of conversation forward. Of course, resources are also key. Resources just in terms of financial resources, but even the human resources and the type of tools available for the work that you do. Our profile, for example, is informed by to even widen the tools advocacy and the tools we use in democracy work. Yes, a lot of interests that are available, but what we do with those is how we transform them into kinds of analytical tools are critically important. CDD is engaged in an initiative with the Democratic Capture Index, for example. Or I think about the risk profiles we are working on. You think about the Capture Index, you say by the time it's done, extent to which a particular country's democracy has been captured can even further inform the risk that is posing for retrogression. So you see those sort of triangulations that you can do across all of these different. But what I also learned is that the system appears to be quite resilient. And the reason I say that is, recently, I had put on my newsfeed 10 years ago, Afrobarometer Round 6 was released. I wrote a piece on a reflection on trust in the EC, and I said, I don't like the way the trust is dwindling and we need to do something about it. In the last half weeks in media engagements, I find things coming up where we have to do as issue of trust. And this presents a dilemma to democracy advocate, right? That the system appears quite resilient. I would have thought years later we would be having a different kind of conversation. If you look at the 2024 democracy report from the V Institute, for example, and you look at Ghana's trajectory, you see a good 10-year period of liberal democracy, right? We moved from an electoral democracy to a liberal democracy. Now we've moved back to electoral democracy. And you keep saying, why can't the system, even if it respects, be able to sustain the gain that it makes? So the work is more difficult you even anticipate because of how resilient the system can be. Is what we're learning. Some of the implications. Sometimes it feels like countries operate with this attitude of, or if I see a fellow doing something bad, let me also learn some of those bad things. That's how sometimes it feels like in this case, right? So when you look at the global, regional, and now dynamics, you sometimes wonder whether we are learning the wrong lessons from behaved, people, but it's something that democracy advocates have to closely watch. I've mentioned already widening of the tool of advocacy. Mobilization is key. When Professor Larry Diamond in Ghana held a session with CDD, he said, how do you smart the political elite and the custodian of democracy who are responsible for both the capture and even some of the regression that we are seeing? And his response to me was, you don't have to smart them. You have to mobilize them. The challenge mobilization for me is also the cost of active citizenship, right? How the state responds to active citizenship. Also, even how sometimes our fellow citizens respond to active citizenship. To further complicate that dilemma is when you look at how described civic in a place like Ghana, it makes you want to extend to where mobilization can actually become the kind of tool that you also need to try and address democratic retrogression. I am thinking of to hear about political reform, tend to hear about institutional reforms, but don't hear enough conversations about administrative reforms. So, if the system is resilient, that the political elites are not that responsive to the kinds of quote-unquote democratic demands that citizens are making, are there administrative things that can begin to do that, especially when looking at the quality of public institutions that is all across the examples that we've provided? Can we begin to think of administrative reforms as the first towards arresting democratic retrogression? So, for example, I give Parliament a lot of credit for the changes it has made to standing order. I am of the view that some of the changes that strengthens even the hands of the minority, because a number of legislative committees would now be led by the minority party, hoping becomes one of those in which can reform administratively institution like Parliament and hopefully improves its staff. The Chief Justice recently launched the Legal Justice Reform, right? You hope that reform that will at least help move the need forward a little bit, rest some of the retreat that we are seeing. We need a lot more conversations around administrative reforms if institutional reform, other type of political reforms are not going to happen any time soon. We do well with elections. If you look at democracy, the one area that we don't fall on is participation, participation. Look at the EIU index, for example, right? We score on political participation, but how do we move from election to good governance? Anyone who studied the constitutions of our two political parties will be quite amazed at how administratively they set up to coordinate party activities away from the smallest unit of the party to the national level. I was quite marveled when I studied those things closely. Then you ask yourself, how do we move from that electoral idea to good governance? And then we should also start about informal institutions. We tend to focus a lot on the rules of the game, established rules, but I think informal institutions have a way of shaping democracy as well. Thank you very much for now, and we'll turn it back to Mark.
Wow, thank you so much. I mean, did you feel as insightful as I did, or so much to unpack, to discuss all the indicators, all that you've shared with us? I don't believe you. Congrats. This is really cool. I think it's a piece of work for our democracy advocates, and to all do well, create publicity around this work. Some of the interesting things that jumped at me, for instance, the fact that John and his team have been able to make the AB data to come up with a democracy risk profile for the various countries. I think that's really amazing, that infographic, and how in a snapshot you're able to tell how a country is doing well in terms of democracy. I think it's really, really amazing. Another thing he showed was from the indicator that we have a 50% chance, as in Ghana, of not retrogressing. And the first thing that me was, is it enough? Should we be excited? We are at 52%. But what optimal mark we should get? Maybe 85. Then what it means is that we have a 48% of retrogressing. I think that's a very worrying sign. And the last thing that I'd like to talk about is the fact that it doesn't look good when you look at our habits. Why we're interested in being heard or pushing our voices out there, looking at the indicators on act citizenship was quite. So, John, once again, congrats. This is really amazing, and I hope we have conversations on this. But we've got to the point where the open, and we all have an opportunity to, contribute to what John has shared with us today. So whether it's a question or it's a comment, or we have 20 minutes to do that. But before we do that, Jonah, allow me to protocol. Please. We're going to have a social media. We can't have a conversation in here only. So we have a slide for you. Please take out your phones. Know that we are all very active on social media. Please take out your phones and let's help to put this conversation. Let's put it online. David, I'm watching you. I'll go around. Yes, we have a slide. These are the accounts you can type, and these are hashtags that we're using. So please, 3 minutes. Just 3 minutes. Take your phone and write. Let's be on social media. Let's take a conversation online. It's a comment. Something that John said about the democracy just right now. Let's keep the conversation online. Let's not keep ourselves here. So, go around like a master. Still working. Yes. I'm going to make the tweet 52%. I get over it. I don't know about you. I see my director making a comment. Thank you. My tweeting. Whilst we are doing this, please get questions ready, because right after this exercise, we'll go straight into the open room. These are the social media handles. There's the Democracy Project on Facebook. And then for Wademos, that's this project as well. We have Wademos Network, Twitter and Facebook, and CDD. John and his team, Adam, you did an amazing work with this project. Congrats. So, like I said, move into the open forum. If you have a question, if you have a suggestion, this is time to contribute to this conversation. We have 20 minutes, so please keep it short and sweet. You can have multiple this. I see 2 hands. My executive, I see 4 hands already. Adam, which mic should we put around? We'll start with HKP, please, as we fondly here.
Thank you very much, John. This is an excellent presentation project. Very, very insightful. Just two quick points. First, the resilience point. And let me just focus on Ghana. One of the things about Ghana's democracy that is not usually captured in a number of these studies works is the fact that we have experienced turnover constantly, right, in government and party position. Because we do not know whether democracy will continue to be resilient if we opt experience over. It's a question that never fails, right? So we times, take 10 years, 8 years, and maybe that is what explains our stable peace. Maybe that explains our resilience. What happens if one political is cast out for much longer than 8 years, 12 years, 6 years, 20 years? They still be interested in playing the game, right? And what is that we must look for in making sure that even if you were cast out, you will still have sufficient faith in the process to keep playing the game. What guarantees that you'd continue to play the game is if you believe, for example, in the electoral legitimacy of the outcomes, maybe you play the game. But you start, I'm cast not because of any merit, but because now the insides, people in the inside change the rules against me, so I'm no longer able to play the game. So the alternation in power and the prospect for alternation ceases, reasons that are not considered meritorious. Those who are out will then have very little incentive to remain in the game played. And it's how do we this from the analysis? The other point, and I think you make it, is this idea of the consequence of democracy and the fact that you can only continue to play democracy, but for so long, right? At some point, people begin to expect certain material dividends on the democracy. And you mentioned Diamond, there are others who have noted, not just in the context of democracy, but in Ghana's case, that the road from democracy to development, the road from repeated contestation for power and rival for power, from that point to delivering dividends for the majority of people, that road goes through good governance, right? That you can have democracy and you can have, repeat elections and all that and turnover. If for a prolonged period you could do that and there's no good governance, you're going to get government, right? And so you picked your last, go into it too. It's also a point of observation that Kofi Annan, the late state, actually, that in this experience of African democracy, what is really lacking is good governance. If you keep doing this democracy and you don't do good governance, or you continue to get bad governance, development is not going to happen. People at some point are going to feel disillusioned. So when you made that about the last slide, I was happy to see that. But what things did you pick up in your research? Which of the factors looked at would give us more insight into that, maybe the institution part is what I thought about. Is there any other insights you could share?
Thank you. I didn't do this, but I think for else, please take the mic.
Reverse House and the Democracy Project in general. I have looked at it very carefully, and you were spot on dealing with issues, because we are seeing Reverse House. The students of democracy, we are not happy with the fact that we worked so well to bring us this far. So the recent military venturism in West Africa is not a good thing. So I am all for this project. But if I pick from Tamale experience, right, two things come to mind. Dividends, democratic dividends versus democratic issues, right? War now, all right? People expect, as Professor Rempe said, expect to have, at the end of the day, gone through that war of democratic journey. We want to, make better our lives, then live a comfortable life. But do we get that? Do we get that? So obviously, as we move on the path of democracy, people will continue to demand for dividend. And if they don't get them, obviously, they will go back to their own order, which I don't want to. That is into authority. And then democratic ethos, gradually giving the government institutional breakdown. We are losing it up. And issue participation, if we look at the way elections are becoming chaotic, and what I've observed over the years is that we try to fix the electoral problems, but at the end of each election, we create another. Take Ghana, for instance, started to deal with the issue of choicism in elections. And then, yeah, we dealt with it, and we move on to what food coming in, the rest of them. People snatching back. So each time there is a problem with it, to create another one, come and hand society. We recall last election, people were shot, and it's bad to get the democratic clock backward. So the democratic tools we need to be strong in that area, and issues of what accountability actually missing is becoming a subject to accountability. Holders of power know power spring, sovereign will of we own power. But when you demand this, guess what? An enemy of open society. That will be the case. And we want it to be called people who must stand up and defend democracy of society. And I don't know what's happening. And something that feels in democratic culture and democratic enterprise in our school. Let me go to the issue. I think what Dr. Sapong, your team also reflect is that these things, economic governance, critical. If we want to cure things, economic governance, you must find a way of what? Operating this bureau to strengthen it so that we drive the benefit. This adventurers, look at it, praetorian to hunting and all that, talk about civil regime performance. And that if a government performing ones believe that they have what to what rest of the state. It brings me to project that CDD has over the years, and that should be brought to bear. Civil military relations, yes, gradually missing out, and we believe that is why we believe that they have the magic wand. Things round, things become difficult. I believe that this project CDD when I was then, and we need to bring it to on this work. As soldiers know, the only way to change democratic president through the ballot, not through a barrel gun. The last one says something, and which is also dear to my heart, is the issue that we continue to what? Take, for instance, 2-year, 2-term cycle, 8 years, 8. The day that a party to break the 8 and go to what? Have a de facto party state. How do we respond to it? And these are my objectives.
Awesome. I mean, it feels like on the team. All right. I've learned so much from your submission. Thank you so much. So we move to the gentleman over there, and then.
Thank you very much for your presentation. My name is Mercurio. I'm from the Center for International Affairs and Policy of Ghana. That is a very good presentation there. But just to add to what Santi said, I just want to find out, did you find any correlation between democratic recession and political dysfunction, or democratic recession symptom of political dysfunction, and necessarily as a, because look at what is happening, democratic retrogression, it looks as that the dysfunction in our political milieu contributing significantly to the democratic that we're talking about. You mentioned the consequences of democratization. The second point we want to raise, are there any factors beyond the critical coordinates that you mentioned that contribute to the democratic research, external factors? The work Rita Abraham said about how external donors in the to consolidate democracy on the continent, do this, and then in the leaders on the continent have to implement autocratic powers in order to achieve that external want them to implement. So I want to find out the process of all these critical needs, external or just the internal that you mentioned. Thank you.
Okay.
Hello. All right. Okay, thank you very much. I have a few questions that I want to ask. I think I have had several conversations on democracy and partisanship as well. My first question is on partisanship. My name is Ron Broby. My first question is partisanship and how it increases, otherwise affects the governance risk. I think CDD-Ghana from Fast Africa reports advocate that politics are very important for democracy. And the last time we met, Doc, sensation centered around partisanship on the democracy balance. Yes, didn't consider it as an asset. We talked about it. All right. So I know to what extent does it affect our risk assessments? And then my second question so goes with those of us here who had our democratic transition. I want to know, because in thinking about it, did you so much miss elections that you didn't actually factor development when we were trained into the Fourth Republic? Because the last time we had election was 1979, and from 1979 to the 80s to the 90s, there was nothing like an election. Did you so much miss elections that we were entering into the Republic? You just prioritized elections our developments. That is the question I want to ask. Thank you very much.
Hello? Yeah, so I want to congratulate you on wonderful presentation. My name is David Fia Santida. I'm a research analyst at Moss Network. Yeah, so the presentation just gave a very pertinent to the work that we do. But I realized the main, let's call it, the value that was calculated here was the risk of retrogression. Now, retrogression is something that we are particularly interested in. It's actually the main point to Ademos. So what I want to know is, how do we, in this particular instance, define retrogression? That when you have a coup, like you have in Mali, you have in Niger, you have in, or is it have the terrorist insurgency that we have in Burkina currently? Actually, Burkina is 60% by terrorist insurgency right now. Is that what we define as retrogression, or is that a state of total chaos? When you actually have the utmost level of retrogression, how do we define that in terms of project? And secondly, I saw factors that as the explaining factors for the risk of retrogression. How do each one of those factors factor? How each one of those factor in the risk that we are calculating? We know that people perform better on certain factors than they do on others. But how do you actually capture the significance which each country is on every single, I don't know. I think I'm talking to it, but I'm sure you get what I'm trying to say.
And to capture these details over this, we're going to, get some differences in, and what are the factors that you can reduce or explain the variance of what we call error as we go along those. Is it going to be maybe differences in demographic, the lines of age? Is it going to be explained by economics, like going to be the factors that account for the variances as we move along? Because our population is getting younger. And
yes, so we keep it short so that we can have that voice. So we'll have the gentleman suit, and you have to join
I'm
some
sure
people here. So he's from the project, but we have access to. So let's.
All right.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are grateful for your wonderful presentation. My name is Felix Man from Progressive People's Communications Director, actually. For me, what I think is when we are talking, anytime we talk about democracy, we mainly focus on how the election went. If countries are able to election, then I think Doc is seen as big man in political studies and tell us that in democracy a lot of principles are there. You really focus and to look at the various principles, especially even in our Ghana context. Quality, rule of law, and all that principle. Our risk will be, in my opinion, because in a country where somebody is to do the machine, not agree with the government, finds a way to suppress such. So in contest, will you say Ghana's level of retrogression is low or high? For me, if you input all these factors, our level will be somewhere else. So retrogression input a lot of indices in, and if Doc will consider these indices to make sure that we can see what's at stake for all of us, so that in the near future we will not find ourselves in trouble. It will help.
Thank you, Felix. So, Paul, we'll have the gentleman next to you to the last question, and Dr. Stephen, you have the opportunity to answer to these.
Thank you. My name is Kwame Sapar. I don't even know, but that's John, I just have a simple question because, as it was earlier, I have open access to you. So I'm thinking after listening to you, error, when citizens open auction their vote to the higher order, do you have a sense as citizens know that what democratic dividends they want and the routes to obtain them through good governance? Do you think democracy measures these dividends by way of development outcomes? Or are we just democracy driven by propagandist government inputs?
Doc, over to you.
To do, particularly around the democratic risk profiles. I can't every single question, so I would make some general comments in response to, because there are some key themes around. So, for example, the question about retrogression, right? And on what continuum do you base each of the countries' experiences retrogression? I believe that the ultimate retrogression election is when the democracy breaks down and military, intervention takes over. But if you look at a place like Ghana, where HKP said, we've had this resistance of, 10 elections every 8 years, etc., etc. When you look back, you are then tempted to say, if we've only been able to have elections, we've experienced some turnover, we don't have real worry about democratic regression. But then when you look beyond election, that is when you also start realizing that you have a period of political stability, regular elections, but aspects of the democratic experience that are, are deteriorating. What we are trying to do with the profile is say that, yes, the big may not look risky. There are certain things underneath that can chip away. So would fall on different, along the spectrum of retrogression. And yes, this is the first iteration of the risk profile. So as we do work on it, I would, factor in all the other things and sharpen the tool. The question about partisanship and why we continue to consider it as ability as opposed to an asset. There's nothing necessarily wrong with partisanship if the fight is over policy and ideas and how to move the development needle forward. But one of the things that picking up when you look at all of the round Afrobarometer is that partisanship is chipping away at even how we look at whether a government is performing well or not. Partisanship is shaping up trust. I've been asking is that why do we see trust in institutions better when our political party is in power than when it is in opposition? So at 9 rounds of before Ghana, for example, you see the shifts, right? Party A is my political party. My trust in a particular institution goes. And then when my party is in opposition, my trust just, someone jokingly said, it's because they know what we know. So why maybe it shapes. But it's the reason why we continue to highlight the danger of partisanship to our politics. Move from democracy through governance to development. Again, if you start thinking about maybe some of the administrative reform and try to look at how the quality of public institutions are improved, then perhaps you can develop, or you can produce kinds of development that I don't think elections is our only obsession, although sometimes it looks like it. I really believe that we want as Ghanaians. Again, if you look at 9 Afrobarometer, policy priorities are very clear, consistent. If you look at the NCC's survey, search of matters of importance to Ghanaians, our policy priorities are very clear, very consistent. So as do we want democracy, I think very clear on that. At the same time, I believe that some of these defective practices that we see are the mechanisms citizens resort to in trying to deal with the pinch points that they feel and some of the frustrations that they feel. The political dysfunction, therefore, becomes what undermines democracy and starts producing some of the retrogression that we are seeing. If I go to the steps, it would cover some of the other questions. So if we can go to a slide, I can address the next step. Some of these are feedback comments. Yeah. So real quick, we plan to continue our democracy dialogues using social media as one of the ways to engage our fellow citizens. We plan to continue our work on the democracy page. So we sent letters post meeting with the political representatives, sent them letters indicating that they are still interested in collaborating with them. We've told them that whenever we develop any analytical tools and reflections of issues, we will share with them. We've also let them know we will be on the lookout for concrete things they would incorporate party manifesto relates to Ghana's democracy. We are going to continue to work on the risk profiles because we use only one round of barometer to test that. But what we want to do is use all the existing rounds so that we can show that the profiles of various countries becoming riskier, if some have been better than others, and how you can really pick on what works years the risk retrogression has gone down, and signs that you pick up when the risk retrogression goes up. We put Dr. Santi on the spot. So yesterday I said to him, if he can convene a couple of his CDD colleagues, folks from whatever, some folks from AP, or 1 to 2 hour technical meeting, just the risk profile, because we could really use the feedback, the input on how we strengthen it, because we're going to use other rounds and expand this action brief is a question from hardware project officer ZM. She said, well, a 6-month project ended, but we want to remain in the case. So we'll do various rounds, election. And we'll move into phase 2, start thinking about ways in which we can expand the work of the. So once again, we're very grateful. Thank you all very much. Where's Ms. Adam, my project officer? Okay, so thank you for all her hard work on the project, but also for Ms. Rebecca is here. We're grateful, and thank you, CDD. Thank you to the communication team at CDD. Please know that since my book launch in 2023, meaning to buy your lunch, your boss now says it's work you love, help, you like things for free. So if the lunch is not coming, please know that your boss says you don't have to. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you once again, John. Yeah, so 7. And so to close our event, we're going to call on Executive CDD Executive Director, Professor Prempe, to give us the back.
She was supposed to invite me to say, but so once again, many thanks to John, and I would like to invite you to join me to offer another round of applause. I think this is an excellent. Yeah. So at CDD, currently been working since 2020, working on a number of research projects, trying to understand democracy is going on the continent, including Ghana. There's one project called Democracy Capture, which we've been working on since 2018. It was briefly interrupted by COVID, and also draws some insights and observations from Afrobarometer, which is to the effect that while Africans continue to say they like democracy, they also say at the same time that they are somewhat dissatisfied with the democracy they are getting or what they are getting from democracy. So Afrobarometer describes Africans generally as dissatisfied Democrats. So that insight, we initiated conversation, open society, to look to why Africans feel that democracy was not delivering to their satisfaction. And if it wasn't delivering, the people who delivering from. But we assume democracy is delivering something. And we see it. It's certainly delivering something. What the people are saying is that it's not delivering it first. So who are the ones who are taking away what it is democracy is delivering for the people? Led us to this democracy capture. And we've done some pilots at 5 or 6 countries. We're working towards measures or tools will allow us to measure by country what it is about democracy that's being captured, whom, and all of those things. Then, most recently, and not concluded that, working on almost the flip side of it is democratic resilience, which is something that John was speaking about, which is what factors democracy allow a democracy to stand threats and vulnerability and all the things that into it, right? So in the region, for example, in West Africa, conversation about resilience has become a very topical, because we are interested to know what makes certain democracy collapse when faced with threats, and what makes other peer democracies with those similar threats, right? Because we know we don't want to make our democracy fragmented. So just like these, like democracy, like democratic resilience, very important to us, because we are beginning to feel that some of us are taking the democracy for granted, and it might reflect in hubris from our class. You see, we are treating democracy as if it's the point that, like Frank Fukuyama said some time back, somewhat purely, democracy is last man and the end of history. Nothing else is going to change. I've arrived, so we can make merry and go about our business. And it appears that when you look at the way we're about Ghana with respect to democracy, one gets the sense that a large portion of the population, certainly the working class, thinks we have reached that end point. Nothing else is going to come up with this. So, and play. And I think we really don't share that. We are very hugely concerned about the quality of democracy and about its ability to deliver dividends. Kwame Brown's question is quite intriguing. Whether or not citizens see democratic dividends in developmental terms, or in what little can get, can trade to get a vote, or sometimes not even at all. Sometimes the side benefit of thinking that from my hometown is the president is good enough, right? And how do we, when we talk democratic dividends, factor in those things? I thought it was because you say material, but actually when you debate social media with people, I know that I have a lot more money in my pocket than those guys who are defending politician, right? But defending this person, you wonder, what are you getting from this? Right? It's just the psychic bit of believing that it is my bad person, your bad person in power. That's democratic for that person. And I think maybe the next iteration of research may want to look at the non-material evidence that maybe citizens get from democracy. That continues to make them support it, even against contrary evidence, contrary and the like. So I thought Kwame was also important. But I also want to thank the participants. The questions have been penetrating and insightful, and I'm happy that you were able to take time to make it to this forum. I enjoyed it much, and I'm hoping that we can next iteration soon. So on behalf of Ademos and on behalf of CD, thank you very much for making this forum, and keep the conversation going. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I'm I'm still in charge for 2 minutes, so indulge me. The first very important that part of this book that